Okay, so get this. We're talking about a runaway iceberg the size of Chicago, and it's just cruising along the Antarctic coast.
Woo! That's
I
wild.
know, right? It
Ah,
sounds like something straight out of a movie.
it does.
This is real deal. This is Iceberg A84. And our main source for this deep dive is this NASA Earth Observatory article. It really breaks down its journey. I mean, it's incredible.
And it was moving fast,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So today, we're going to try to figure out what's propelling this icy behemoth and what this whole thing tells us about what's happening down in Antarctica.
Yeah, it's definitely a captivating story. I think A84's speed is really what's gotten everyone's attention.
Yeah, for sure. So the article talks about A84 breaking free back in January, and then it made this 250-kilometer journey in just a month.
Wow.
That's like traveling the entire length of New Jersey in just a few weeks. And it's not just the distance, it's the speed that's causing a stir in the scientific community.
Yeah, I can see why.
What's the big deal about a little speed?
Well, iceberg calving, which is that process of icebergs breaking off from glaciers or ice shelves, is totally natural.
Right.
It's how these icy giants maintain, equilibrium. But the pace at which A84 is moving is definitely out of the ordinary.
Ah.
It suggests that there might be more at play beneath the surface, literally.
So something else is going on.
Could be.
The article mentions a glaciologist, Christopher Schumann. He was quoted saying he was impressed by A84's speed. He even wondered just what is happening in the water under the ice shelf.
I love that.
Right. It's like an iceberg mystery novel.
Totally.
Yeah.
So scientists are investigating various factors that could be contributing to A84's unusual velocity.
Okay, like what?
Well, one possibility is the influence of ocean currents.
Oh, makes sense.
Warmer waters can undercut and melt the base of the ice shelf, creating cavities that make it more susceptible to fracturing and accelerating the calving process.
So warmer waters are like tiny little chisels chipping away at the ice shelf from below.
That's a good analogy. It's
Yeah.
a gradual yet persistent process. Then you've got wind patterns that can exert force on the exposed portion of the iceberg, pushing it along. Think of it like a giant sail catching the wind.
I can picture that.
Yeah.
And the NASA article mentioned they used multiple satellites, Terra, Aqua, and Suomi NPP, to keep tabs on A84. It's incredible how technology allows us to witness these events unfold from space. I bet those satellite images are something to see.
Absolutely. They provide invaluable data for researchers who are tracking A84's movements and studying the changes in the surrounding ice shelf.
Right.
Speaking of the ice shelf, A84 broke off from the George VI ice shelf, which has its own unique history.
Yeah, this ice shelf is kind of sandwiched between the Antarctic Peninsula and Alexander Island. What's so special about its location? It seems pretty cozy tucked away there.
You could say that being nestled between these land masses has actually contributed to the George VI ice shelf's relative stability over the years. It's been sheltered from the full brunt of open ocean currents and storms.
So it's like a protected little ice haven.
In a sense, yes. But even with this natural buffer, the George VI ice shelf is still showing signs of change.
Oh, no.
Observations since the 1940s reveal a gradual retreat, a trend that's raising concerns about its long-term resilience.
That's unsettling, especially considering what we're seeing with 84 breaking off and speeding away. It's a reminder that even seemingly stable parts of Antarctica are feeling the effects of a changing climate.
Precisely. And it underscores the need to closely monitor these changes and understand their implications for the future of this icy continent and the planet as a whole.
Right, so A84 is like a messenger, a dramatic reminder of the forces reshaping our world.
A very poignant way to put it. And as we delve deeper into this story, we'll uncover more about what A84's journey can teach us about the complex interplay of climate change, ocean currents, and the fate of ice shelves in a warming world.
This is already giving me a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
And we're just getting started. But before we dive into the deeper implications of A84's adventure, let's take a moment to really appreciate the sheer size of this thing. The article says it's 30 kilometers long and 17 kilometers wide. Well, imagine the entire city of Chicago just floating away.
Oh,
That's A84.
that puts it into perspective.
I know, right? All right, let's put the size of A84 into perspective. Imagine the excitement and maybe a little bit of terror if you looked out your window and saw Chicago drifting away.
Oh my God.
But this isn't just a spectacle. This massive chunk of ice breaking away is a signal, right? What can A84 tell us about the bigger picture of what's happening in Antarctica?
That's a great question and one that researchers are actively investigating. The fact that A84 broke free from the George VI ice shelf, which has been considered relatively stable, is a sign that things may be changing more rapidly than we previously thought.
So even the safe zones aren't so safe anymore.
It's a wake-up call that even seemingly protected areas are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And that's a crucial point to consider as we explore the broader implications of A84's journey and what it signifies for the future of Antarctica and beyond.
Well, that's a fantastic segue into the next part of our deep dive. We've set the stage with this epic iceberg tale. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what it all means.
Let's do it. So A84's journey is like one piece of a much larger puzzle, right? It's a reminder that the icy realms of Antarctica are not static landscapes. They're dynamic systems constantly changing.
You keep mentioning puzzle pieces, so let's explore that further. We've touched upon A84's speed, possible causes, and the vulnerability of the George VI ice shelf. But what are the other pieces scientists are examining in this icy jigsaw puzzle?
Well, one crucial aspect is the dance between the ice shelves and ocean currents. Remember the article mentioned how A84 was initially hemmed in by sea ice, but once that melted away, ocean currents could steer it into open water.
Right, so initially the sea ice was like a protective barrier?
Exactly. Think of it as a natural buffer zone. Sea ice acts as a shield for ice shelves, absorbing some of the energy from waves and wind, mitigating the erosive forces of the ocean. As sea ice dwindles due to rising temperatures, ice shelves become more exposed, vulnerable to the relentless push and pull of ocean currents.
And that dwindling sea ice could lead to more icebergs breaking free and setting off on their own grand adventures, right?
Yeah.
But what about the consequences? If we have more icebergs cruising around, how does that impact the delicate balance of the Antarctic ecosystem?
That's a key concern. The presence of large icebergs can disrupt ocean circulation patterns, influencing the distribution of nutrients and salinity levels, which are vital for marine life. They can also alter the physical landscape of the seabed as they scrape along the ocean floor, impacting benthic communities and habitats.
So it's like a chain reaction, where one event triggers a cascade of effects throughout the entire ecosystem.
Exactly. It highlights the interconnectedness of these systems and underscores the far-reaching consequences of changes in the polar regions. For example, the article mentions how scientists have observed an increase in iceberg calving events along the Antarctic Peninsula in recent decades, which has been linked to the decline of krill populations, a keystone species in the Antarctic food web.
Wow, so it's not just about ice melting and sea levels rising. It's about the ripple effects on the entire ecosystem, even impacting the tiny creatures that form the foundation of the food chain.
Precisely. It's a complex web of interactions, and understanding those connections is crucial for predicting and mitigating the broader impacts of climate change.
Okay, so we got ice shelves, ocean currents, and marine ecosystems all intertwined. But the ocean floor itself plays a role too, doesn't it? The article briefly mentioned something about underwater topography. What's the connection there?
Ah, yes. The topography of the seabed, those hidden underwater landscapes of canyons, ridges, and valleys, can influence the flow of water and how ice shelves melt from below. Imagine a deep underwater canyon channeling warm water towards the base of an ice shelf, accelerating the melting process.
It's like a secret underwater pathway for warm water to sneak in and attack the ice shelf from beneath.
A very vivid description. And these interactions between the ocean floor and ice shelves are another piece of the puzzle that scientists are actively studying. They're using sonar and other technologies to map these underwater landscapes and understand how they contribute to ice shelf dynamics.
It's mind-boggling to think about these hidden underwater features shaping what's happening above the surface.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of our planet's systems. And let's not forget the role of atmospheric conditions like wind patterns and air temperatures, which can also influence the movement and melting of icebergs and ice shelves.
So it's like a grand symphony of forces all playing their part in shaping the icy landscapes of Antarctica.
Indeed. And even subtle shifts in these forces can have profound effects on the delicate balance of these systems.
Which brings us back to A84 and the scientists closely monitoring its every move. What kind of insights can we glean from this runaway iceberg's journey? Can it provide clues about what's in store for other parts of Antarctica or even the Arctic?
That's what makes A84 such a captivating case study. It's a real-time experiment unfolding before our eyes, providing valuable data and insights that can be applied to other icy regions facing similar challenges.
So it's like a sneak peek into the future of our planet's icy realms.
In a sense, yes. A84's journey is a potent reminder that change is afoot in these polar regions, and understanding these changes is crucial for navigating a future where a warming climate continues to reshape our world. For instance, scientists are using data from A84's movements and the melting patterns of the George VI ice shelf to refine their models and predictions for other vulnerable ice shelves in Antarctica and Greenland.
It's amazing how one runaway iceberg can provide such a wealth of information.
Indeed. And it's a testament to the ingenuity and dedication of the scientists who are working tirelessly to unravel the mysteries of these icy realms.
This deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to the complexity and interconnectedness of these systems. It's not just about an iceberg drifting away. It's about understanding the intricate web of forces at play and how they're shaping the future of our planet.
I'm glad to hear that. It's crucial to see beyond the spectacle and grasp the deeper significance of these events.
Okay, we've unpacked a lot about A84's wild ride, the George VI ice shelf, and the delicate balance of the Antarctic ecosystem. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the giant iceberg in the room, climate change.
Yes, it's the overarching narrative that ties all these pieces together. A84's journey, the melting of glaciers and ice shelves, the changing ocean currents and ecosystems, they're all interconnected and influenced by a warming climate.
It's like climate change is the conductor of this grand symphony of change in Antarctica.
A very apt analogy. And understanding how climate change is impacting these systems is crucial for addressing the challenges we face and shaping a more sustainable future.
So let's talk about this challenge. What are some of the specific consequences of ice shelf melt that we should be concerned about? We've touched upon sea level rise, but what else is there?
Sea level rise is indeed a major concern, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. As ice shelves melt and break apart, they can disrupt ocean circulation patterns, which can influence weather patterns globally. For example, changes in the Antarctic circumpolar current. A powerful current that encircles Antarctica can have far-reaching effects on ocean temperatures and salinity levels, impacting weather systems across the southern hemisphere and beyond.
So it's not just about coastal communities being flooded, it's about potential disruptions to weather patterns on a much larger scale.
Precisely. And then there are the impacts on marine ecosystems, as we discussed earlier. The loss of ice shelves and changes in ocean currents can alter the distribution of nutrients and salinity, affecting the delicate balance of life in the Southern Ocean.
It's like a domino effect, where one change triggers a cascade of consequences throughout the entire ecosystem.
That's a good way to put it. And it highlights the need for a holistic approach to understanding and addressing the impacts of climate change. We need to consider the interconnectedness of these systems and the potential for far-reaching consequences.
Okay, so we've got rising sea levels, disrupted weather patterns, and stressed ecosystems. It's starting to paint a pretty grim picture.
It's understandable to feel that way, but it's important to remember that we have the power to influence the course of these events. The choices we make today, individually and collectively, will determine the future of these icy realms and the planet as a whole.
So what can we do? It can feel overwhelming to think about tackling a global issue like climate change. What actions can we take that will actually make a difference?
That's a question that deserves its own deep dive. But in a nutshell, it's about reducing our carbon footprint, supporting policies that promote sustainability, and staying informed and engaged in these conversations.
So it's about collective action, but it starts with each of us doing our part.
Exactly. And it's about using our voices and our choices to shape a more sustainable future.
Well, that's a great note to end on. But we're not quite done yet. We've covered a lot of ground, from the runaway iceberg to the interconnectedness of ecosystems and the far-reaching impacts of climate change. But before we wrap up this episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on the human element of this story. The scientists, researchers, and explorers who are dedicating their lives to understanding these icy realms. What can we learn from their work and their perspective on these changes?
That's a wonderful point to bring up. The human perspective is often overshadowed by the scientific data and the grand scale of these events. But behind the numbers and the satellite images are dedicated individuals who are driven by a passion for discovery and a deep respect for the natural world.
It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom of climate change. But it's important to remember that there are people out there working tirelessly to find solutions and inspire change.
Absolutely. And their stories are just as compelling as the scientific discoveries they're making. Their dedication, their resilience, and their hope for the future are a source of inspiration for all of us.
I'm eager to hear more about these individuals and their experiences in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, let's take a moment to appreciate the human element of this story and the power of passion and perseverance in the face of global challenges. We've been talking about A84, You know, this massive iceberg making its way along the Antarctic coast.
Yeah.
And it's really got me thinking, this whole situation feels like a giant metaphor for climate change itself.
I see what you mean. It's dramatic, unpredictable, and the ripple effects can be felt far and wide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got this huge chunk of ice breaking away seemingly out of nowhere and setting off this chain reaction we're still trying to understand. It's a powerful reminder that climate change might be a gradual process overall.
Right.
But it can have these sudden dramatic events that catch us off guard.
Yeah, that's a very insightful observation. And just like with A84, we may not fully grasp the consequences of climate change until much further down the line.
Which is a bit unsettling, to be honest, because by then it might be too late to change course.
That's why it's so crucial to act now based on the scientific evidence we have available. We can't afford to wait for all the answers before taking action.
You're right. But sometimes it feels overwhelming. What can we as individuals really do to address a global issue like climate change?
It's true that climate change is a massive challenge, but that doesn't mean our individual actions are meaningless. Everything from reducing our own carbon footprint to supporting policies that promote sustainability can contribute to a larger solution.
So it's about collective action, but it starts with each of us doing our part.
Absolutely. And it's about staying informed, engaging in these conversations, and holding our leaders accountable for making responsible decisions.
Speaking of staying informed, we've been deep diving into this NASA article about A84, but I'm curious, what are some other resources people can explore to learn more about these topics?
There are some fantastic organizations and websites dedicated to climate change research and education. The IPCC, for example, provides comprehensive reports that synthesize the latest scientific findings. You've also got NASA's website, which has a wealth of information and stunning imagery related to climate change and Earth science.
Those are great resources. And for folks who prefer a more visual approach, documentaries could be incredibly impactful. Have you seen any lately that you'd recommend?
There's a new documentary called Chasing Icebergs that follows a team of photographers and scientists as they document the melting of glaciers and ice shelves in Greenland. It's visually stunning and really drives home the magnitude of what's happening in these icy landscapes.
I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that these changes are happening right now, not in some distant future. And they're affecting real people, communities, and ecosystems all over the world.
Exactly. That's why it's so crucial to connect the science with the human stories to understand the basinal and societal impacts of climate change.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question. We've been focusing on A84 and the George VI ice shelf. But what about all the other ice shelves around Antarctica and Greenland? What does the future hold for them as the climate continues to warm?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that scientists are grappling with every day. The answers are complex and uncertain. But one thing is clear. The choices we make today will have a profound impact on the future of these icy landscapes and the planet as a whole.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of runaway icebergs and climate change. It's been a fascinating and at times a bit unsettling journey, but ultimately I think it's been a hopeful one.
It's been a pleasure sharing this exploration with you and your listeners.
Remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay informed, and let's all do our part to create a more sustainable future. Until next time, keep diving deep.